hear something weird. So this is an interview with Infinity Ward about Modern Warfare, but not in the way you'd think, because this is actually audio that I recorded on my phone while we were at the studio talking to Joel Emsley, Jeffrey Smith, and Mark Grigsby.
Didn't you have your cameras there?
Yeah, but you know how cover story trips go, where it's like, this was a written interview where it was Shay talking about Call of Duty 4, developing that game because this team worked on that, then they left and went to Respawn, then came back to Infinity Ward.
Right. So this isn't you like slyly recording on your phone while...
No, I was the backup recording and then realized like, God, I love this conversation so much, especially them talking about like going to Respawn and breaking everyone's heart, and then breaking everyone's heart at Respawn and coming back. Like, it's such a weird, raw story from the video game industry, and they were so honest and so sweet. And it's like, this audio should get out there in some form. So we're going to just play audio from this.
For our video viewers, will you be sitting at the table as it's airing?
Yeah, I'm just going to be nodding along like it's my favorite pop song. No, so we just put, Joe, you know how podcasts work. We're going to put some Call of Duty gameplay in there, yada, yada, yada.
Okay.
Just to have something visual, but it's a weird one, and I'm curious to see what the reaction is, because I'm in love with it just because it is so bizarre.
Great. Go back in time a little bit.
There's a Joel. All right. So yeah, it's basically some high-level stuff about Call of Duty 4 and kind of its legacy. So simple one first. What was the feeling like in the studio during development?
COD 4?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I can answer this.
Okay. And this is Ben Hansen jumping in just to explain that the voice you're now hearing is Joel Emsley, the studio art director. Spared no expense.
It was coming out of World War II. We didn't know if we were going to be able to do a modern game, and I was actually working on a Jagdpanzer, into Call of Duty 4. It was still called Call of Duty 4 at that point, but it was a moment where we really wanted to take down Halo, really bad, and we wanted to create a Halo killer, and part of the studio went off and was working on like another game to do that. And so it was a weird, making Call of Duty 4 was a weird moment in time where the studio was kind of two teams working on different projects. And then eventually halfway through the project, they cut bait and said, let's dig in on, because we got the go ahead to go modern. And once we had that, it was just, okay, well now we've got the freedom to do all these toys and stuff, but it was a hustle. And it was also, Call of Duty wasn't a big deal until then. That was you want to talk about surprise, like you're asking surprise earlier. Yeah. That was surprising when we showed up to that E3, which is the airplane hangar E3.
Yeah, that was a weird one.
It was not a big deal. It was like everybody was saying, "Oh, great game! This looks awesome," but you didn't think anything of it. Just thought, "Oh, fantastic! They like it. Fantastic! They think it looks good." I even remember showing up to they had like a single player like launch night or something at Universal City Walk, and they had all this area roped off, and they had I think it was Army Reserve marching around the GameStop. Or
we were signing posters. And
we're ready to sign. We're ready for the hordes of fans to show up. Nobody showed up. I remember standing with an earshot of two journalists, and one of them said, "Man, I feel sorry for these Infinity Ward guys." And then shortly, I kind of was bummed out, and I thought, okay, well, I mean, at least people like the game. And then we had the beta, and that all of a sudden the game just started really, taking off, and that was a surprising moment. So the feeling in the studio was we were excited to make something different, but it was
we were uncertain.
Yeah, we didn't know
it was going to be a blockbuster the way it was.
When we always do this thing called Friday Night Fights, where we all play MP on Friday nights.
And this is the voice of Modern Warfare's multiplayer designer, Jeffrey Smith.
We knew something was there when we're all getting calls from girlfriends and wives of "Where are you?" on Friday night, and it's 10:30, 11 o'clock, and people just aren't.
Crash
they're
was
just
a
not
total
stopping
mess,
playing.
and you could fall out of it.
Yeah,
but asshole wouldn't sew up his Geo.
But people were opting in to just play the whole night, and that's when
that was bad.
Well, we knew we had a good game.
Yeah, I think that's when it started turning, and we're like,
just didn't know that it was going to be as successful as it was.
What led it? Was it just the change in setting kind of motivated the team, or what was the magical ingredient here?
It was creative freedom, and that was the first time we introduced motion capture.
Yeah.
We could actually go out, and we traveled out to 29 Palms. We hung out with tanks, started learning about modern contemporary military. All of our thought processes was like old rusty World War II stuff, and it was basically talking to soldiers that were up in years and they're recalling things. But I think what was interesting about going into modern warfare was that you could go to 29 Palms and hang out with active service members and talk to them about their experiences. So I remember I was doing the Abrams tank, and I had a Marine that could completely rip my head off. He was a tank guy, and he said, "You're going to call this tank War Pig, right?" So that was my tank in Iraq, and that's what you're going to call your tank. And I'm like, I'm not going to argue with you, dude. And you can see it, it's War Pig. Like that was his thing. And he said, "I want AC/DC in the cabin because that's what we rolled to over the berms." And I'm like, all right. They told us crazy stories about he ran over some dude's car one day by accident and said sorry and just kept going. But it was that type of interaction with people that actually were fresh, like just there, and we have that same experience on this one. I think there's something about getting that information.
I actually had an observation a while back that when we were doing COD 2, I thought it was a really solid game. All my friends were playing Halo, and I couldn't convince them to give COD 2 a try. And I was like, why? I was like, oh, well, you're this really cool spaceman who's shooting stuff. It's really hard for me to convince them to be cool with like a wooden gun and like a pot on your head. And it was only, I think, when we went to Modern where you felt cool. And I think there's a little something there where you actually feel cool playing, like you kind of put yourself in the situation. That I think that kind of turned stuff. But.
Do you remember like the big pivots in development? Do you remember big meetings where the game went a certain way instead of another? We
had a lot of problems with COD 4 because we were going from historic-based levels and content to made-up stuff. And I remember early on, a lot of us just kept thinking, this feels too James Bond. This doesn't feel legit. And it took us a long time to internalize that and become okay with creating new things and still making them feel real. Mm-hmm. And so single player took a lot of restarts and rejiggering to kind of get a formula down.
That we had to cut bait on that were in development for like 6 months each.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And and then somewhere like a month before that E3, it was like Kriegler and Tsunami had Todd Sue had our art director and one of our lead artists at the time. They kind of figured out how to approach the night vision and Bog A, and that once they hit that and they lit it, and then they turned the lights off and went to the NVGs. So there was you're asking like an aha moment. That was a shift, a pivot.
Yeah. Right before E3. That was the biggest shift.
It was real
what it was?
fast,
It was that yellow sodium light that suddenly like lit it up, and you're
it unlocked something.
Yeah.
Like it was interesting.
So there were 2 levels that you kind of had to cut after 6 months of development?
Yeah.
Do you remember what they were?
It was
Sea Knight.
Descent.
And this is the voice of animator Mark Grigsby, who obviously you might recognize as Sergeant Griggs from that game.
It was Descent and Sea Knight Defend.
Yeah.
And that was during the development of the Halo killer that he was talking about.
Yeah, and what I think what was weird is they didn't quite... It's like our designers hadn't figured out how to design for Modern yet. Yeah. So they were building these kind of... The Descent was this huge bombed out, like a J-dammed bunker.
Yeah.
And it was a circular experience, almost like... I guess the Gulag would have been the good version of it later. But it was a descent down into it with fast ropes and stuff. And then it was very James Bondish.
Yeah. So it sounds like a level in GoldenEye.
Yeah. It did feel like that, didn't it? Yeah.
It just wasn't
Silo, right?
But when we got to the bottom, we were like, what do we do now? And I think that maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm pulling it out of my ass, but maybe that's where the Folsom from Gulag came from.
Maybe. And then the Sea Knight Defend, we had almost a Black Hawk Down scenario where we were trying to make our way through civilians, and that didn't work out great. And then you would get to the Sea Knight, and you had to circle saw your way out, and then you guys reused those animations at the end of the game for cutting
that's right.
into the...
We did try to interact with civilians in COD 4, and it just didn't hold up fidelity-wise.
And we tried to do stretcher bearer combat, but that gave way to the
I think we
wounded carry for
Scout Sniper. Figured it out in MW2, but we had to cut bait on that too.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that hit the cutting room floor.
Yeah. I'm still a little bit confused. So it started as there were 2 different projects in the studio first, and the first you said you were working on a Panzer. Is that the code name, or you're working on a Panzer?
He was just making a World War II
I was
tank.
working on a tank, and then they decided to work on another game. It was almost like a conceptual, like a prototype.
What do you say? You were just working on a tank that was going to be in this other.
So yeah, I was working on before we made the decision to go to modern.
Yeah.
The studio was working on another Modern Warfare, or no, I mean another World War II game.
Gotcha.
So that would have been Call of Duty 4. And sometime in that moment, we got the go-ahead to work on a Modern Warfare game. At the same time, a small group of people went off to make a prototype of another game also, so that we could develop two at the same time.
And now it's more sci-fi?
Yeah, that was total sci-fi. But it was obvious that it split the talent of the team up, and the parts were not. I mean, we're the result. The whole, I think, Infinity Ward experience, like what we make, is the sum of the parts. Like all the components work together, and that's saying the same thing for now, but even more so back then. It was a smaller crew. When you had components missing, it threw the whole thing off balance, and that's why it was realized pretty quickly. Thank God, and they brought everybody back together, and then we dug in on Modern Warfare.
Were any of those ideas that were scrapped from the sci-fi one reused in Infinite Warfare, or like resurfaced?
We weren't here. So.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah,
I don't know if anybody had any idea about that.
I kind of think in Extinction, maybe.
Yeah. I think some of it made its way into that.
Oh, because it was aliens and stuff.
Yeah.
I think some of the mechanics looked similar.
Looked similar,
familiar.
like the four-legged creatures.
That's cool. That was neat. I like what they did with that.
Yeah.
I'm pulling that out of my ass too, so I don't know.
Yeah, it could be
I wasn't
connected.
there. I wasn't here for that either.
Outsiders observation.
Did what was like the most? When did you guys realize how big COD 4 was when it shipped? Like, was there a moment y'all remember where you have that holy shit moment?
I did, but it was more of like MW2.
Oh, really?
I was wearing like an MW2 T-shirt going through Heathrow Airport, and like there was like 5 security guys that were busting my chops, asking me when the next DLC was going to come. At that time, we weren't like, we were still feel like we were underdogs, like trying to get to be a household name, and then
we
it
always
kind of was
felt
like
underdogs.
Yeah, and then it was
Still
like
do for
I was
some
like, holy
reason.
cow, is this actually a household name?
Yeah.
I had a COD 4 hat on at Cost Plus, and the checkout girl was like, my boyfriend won't stop playing that, and I was like, thanks, sorry.
You start getting wives and girlfriends saying,
Oh, yeah, we've had that a few
ruining my
times.
life.
Yeah.
Then you're in this. You've got a sticky game.
For COD 4,
What about you?
When I realized that it was really something was when we won the Game of the Year at the DICE Awards.
Oh, yeah.
And just the ramp up of the amount of copies that we were selling at that point. And we were at the table for the award for Game of the Year, and then my song started playing for the in-game credits. And they were like, and Call of Duty 4 wins. I was like, oh, my fucking song's playing too, and I'm about to win an award. Okay.
This is great.
This is just an award. It was cool. That was my moment. I was like, all right, we have arrived. That's pretty cool.
It was for me Modern Warfare 2 as well. My wife and I took a trip before we had kids, and we never would take trips because we're both like crazy into our jobs, and so we took a trip Highlands of Scotland. I'm in the middle of nowhere in this place, not in the middle of nowhere, but of this place called Inverness in Scotland. And I went to the mall there, and it was Call of Duty. You're asking me about the Wii.
Yeah.
The Wii was number one. Xbox, PlayStation. It was just like bam, 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 like right down. PC was like number one across the board on Modern Warfare 2, and I'm just like, holy crap, that's crazy. And we're out in the middle of nowhere, and this thing is, the Scots are into it now, and they're very civilized. It was a really cool moment, but it was wild, crazy experience.
Yeah.
What was your reaction the first time you saw the nuke scene?
Oh, you guys go, and I love telling this story.
I mean, I got to see it kind of step by step, but I remember we were all freaked out that we were going to show it in the trailer. We're like, "They're ruining everything," and then
spilling the beans.
And then one of our bosses was saying, "Oh, this happens in movie trailers all the time, and you can't make those connections while you watch it." So, but we were a little freaked out that we were going to show it right then.
Did you animate it?
No, I don't even think it was animated. It was just the player motion model. Just moving along at a
We probably used the shell shock. We used shell shock for everything, for like messing around.
I fired it up, and I'm like, what is this bullshit?
Yeah.
And I looked at somebody, and I'm like, well, I get up, right? And they're like, no, you fucking
just
die.
die.
Like, this is
This is
gameplay. What is this? I can't win.
Yeah.
Like, why do I want to play a game I can't win? That I was so pissed
Our
off.
boss at the time, when I said the same thing to him,
I didn't know what I was saying, obviously.
he looked at me and was like, "What?" it's gonna be fucking awesome. Don't worry about it. I was like, nah, dude, this is fucking garbage. No, it's gonna be good.
The nuke blast was awesome, but the aftermath, I'm like,
this
is garbage.
This is stupid.
Yeah.
But whatever.
I mean,
Turned out to be okay.
smarter people knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
You could tell.
Did that moment pop in development and like all gillied up? Like, did you have an idea of what was going to be the lasting legacy or like the standout moments in single player?
Ghillie, I was so spun up on doing a ghillie suit. I remember, getting our advisor to make the ghillie suit, which we pulled out of the archives for this game and redid it.
Oh, really?
So the ghillie suit in the game now that we did for one of our I guess you like buy one of the versions and you get skins. So that's the original ghillie suit.
That's gotta be musky as hell.
Rescan and redone. It's the same one. It's like downstairs still. But I was so excited to actually get the opportunity to. I was all about getting it to blend into the environment, and the shaders at the time weren't fantastic, so they kept changing the lighting, and I kept having to change the ghillie suit to match. It kept ruining my shot, and I was working on this perfect blend where you could just like crouch and you can't see him. And I was all about that because we were doing multiplayer, and I'm like, oh my god, we gotta get a ghillie suit that actually works so I can shoot at you guys and you can't tell where I'm shooting you from. So I was all about it. But I think I finally hit the end of my rope with somebody changing the lighting, and I went and I barked at somebody, and I really bummed him out. I forgot who it was, and I like hurt his feelings really bad. And I'm like, keep changing the goddamn lighting. I'm not kidding. I recalibrated the ghillie suit maybe just under 20 times because they couldn't make up their mind on what vision set and all this other stuff. Now everything's physically based, so you don't have to worry about it. It just works. It's
right.
Great.
When they showed it on stage, nobody knew how painful that scene was.
Oh my god! But you had a feeling. There was a feeling about that level. I don't know if it was the mystery you get of abandoned places, and there was something about that environment that was so spooky. And then you had this ghillie suit working. I don't think it was the first time anyone did a ghillie suit.
Yeah.
Did you animate that character?
That was mocap. It's good. That was Paul. Yeah.
Good.
It's good.
Yeah.
So with moments like the nuke and with all gillied up, did the team kind of feel like they had to one-up themselves with Modern Warfare 2? Because we had some pretty bombastic moments in there, too.
I feel like we always go... we crank things to 11 on our follow-up titles. So
uneven.
COD 1 had great pacing and downtime and quiet moments and pace. And COD 2, they're like, oh, well, everybody likes the intensity. Let's crank it up. And a lot of COD 2 was really intense. Go back to COD 4, nice pacing. What happened in MW2? Crank it up again. And it's like, we don't learn, So it was always kind of funny. But when you're in it, you don't quite have that 30,000 view. Views
During
here.
development, we were working on Cliffhanger. I was working on it with one of the lead designers for the climbing and then soap catching you as you fall. On development on the other single player levels, they kept having the player fall and then get caught, fall and get caught and fall and get. I was like, dude,
what, like helicopters crashing?
Was it 3 times?
It's like we need to change this up. The player feels like let me bring that back. He feels like a wuss. You know what I mean? He's like he needs to be strong and stop falling all the place. But they changed it up a little bit, but there was still a lot of falling and catching the player.
Yeah.
Do you think those types of scenes inspired something like No Russian? Just kind of as
No
water.
Russian polarized the studio.
Oh.
Yeah.
When it was happening.
Yeah.
There was a side of the studio that felt that it should be played from the perspective of like a security guard that got caught up in it. Then there was the other side that liked the way that it was going. And then I remember I was doing all the civilians for No Russian, and I just wouldn't. There was a point in time where we were discussing how gory do you get with the people that are getting hit, and I pulled back and I said, you don't need it. It's just people are getting tagged and there's squibs going off. It's all good. And then my wife looked at it. She's all, where's all the blood and guts? And I'm like, well, we didn't do it. She's like, here. She called me out. She calls me on my bullshit. It's pretty funny. But she looks at things with a different lens. She's a lawyer.
Not your typical bullshit to be called
She
out.
doesn't mess around, man, but she's a good gut check on stuff.
Gotta give those innocents some gore.
She's like, where's the blood and guts? And I'm like, I don't think it needs it. She's like, I think it does.
Wow.
So I disagree with you.
Mark, was there like a most memorable day in development on that first game that stands out to you?
On COD 4?
Yeah.
When I came back from working on the Halo Killer game, and then I was like, I was really against going to motion capture. I'm a purist when it comes to animation. Like, if you can't really animate to a level of motion capture, then you probably shouldn't be animated. That's probably too harsh, but I feel that way. I felt that way then. So when we were like, yeah, we need to get more animations and we need to do motion capture, I was like, I'm not doing that. I'll work on view models. So you guys do the motion capture. So when I came back from HK, I started on the M4. And then the other animator that was working on view models, he's like, oh my God, I'm so happy that you're working on view models now, Mark. I was like, okay, yeah, cool, whatever. I'll keep going with this. I'm not doing the motion capture. So that was one of the most memorable moments. Refusing motion capture.
Yeah.
Good night.
Here's a weird question. Why did you decide to come back to Infinity Ward?
This is going to be all three of us, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
I heard, were you the first one to come back?
I was the first one, but I felt like I gave Respawn like a really solid go, like 7 years, and I was just getting a little bit burnt out on, it's interesting. It's like the industry went to high speed movement and advanced mechanics and stuff, and I was always a really hardcore like Counter-Strike player, and that's why I loved Modern Warfare. Mm-hmm. And so I remember a point in time where I was just getting kind of exhausted by the whole, even all the wall running, all this other stuff, and jetpacks and stuff, and the palette and all that stuff. And the industry's kind of moved that way. There's a lot of that going on, and I guess for me it was I saw Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered, and I started having these thoughts in my head. I was like, I really missed that. I missed that setting. I missed that genre. I missed that type of gameplay, that immersive environment, because it looks real to me. I missed that. And I watched that, and Dave Stoll, or their studio director, he'd give me a call like some time back, and I was at like our former art director's like going away party, and we kind of reconnected there, and Dave hit me up and said, look, we're if you're ever interested in coming back, we've got a spot for you. If you're interested, it would be nice to work together again. And I'm like, after I finished I basically told him, I said, well, what if I finish out my current project, and then do my job and get it done to the best of my ability, and then we'll talk. And then once I got to that point in time, which was I guess it was with Christmas vacation 2016. I looked at Remastered, and I was looking at the game. I looked at Infinite Warfare, and I'm like, man, the production value of this game is just, there's so much potential, and I could see, that we were talking about that engine earlier about it's like 5 years in development. Now, parts of that engine were alive and well in Infinite Warfare, and you could see it. I could see the tech that was there. It was unrefined still. And brand, really new in that moment. But man, it really was convincing me that, I went back and I asked Dave. The moment in time was when I asked him, I said, I have this really weird feeling. I didn't even actually hear any rumors. I just kind of guessed.
Really?
It seemed logical that Infinity Ward, it seemed like Remastered was such it made a statement. And it seemed like the community and everybody else reacted to it maybe the same way I was. And it did seem at the time that the gaming industry, or the gaming community in general, was kind of like wanting to go back to stuff like that. And I think even looking at other games that were more believable, I asked him, I said, if you're thinking of doing a new Modern Warfare game, I'm really interested. And he kind of, I wasn't NDA'd, so he was kind of hesitant, but he said, yeah, we're thinking about it. And I went, I'm really serious now. I would love to be a part of that. And I told him, that was Modern Warfare was, no doubt, like some of the best development years of my life. I had the most fun, and it's turned out that way, thank God. it's been like a high point in my career working on this project. I'm not bullshitting because my boss is sick. It's true. It's been a hell of a ride.
How much of it, this is very superficial, how much of it was the name itself? I know this is a terrible name, but it was called like Current Combat, or it was just called Call of Duty, just a full reboot. Like, do you think there's something so nostalgic about just that name, Modern Warfare, that's really a core reason you came back?
No, I came back to work on a realistic contemporary shooter. I was thinking in my head. I mean, I didn't care what it was called. I didn't even really care if it wasn't called Call of Duty. It didn't matter to me. I just wanted to work on that type of a game.
Yeah.
Whatever name you put on it, it's fine. At the end of the day, how much do I love this thing and how long am I playing it? That means you're making a good game. That's what mattered.
Pat, what was people's reaction when some old timers came back to the studio? This is the current co-studio head for Infinity Ward, Patrick Kelly.
You know, it was a combination of emotions. I think people were very excited. I think they were a little anxious. They weren't sure what that would mean in terms of the culture and whatnot of the studio. A little nervous because, you know, for all of us around the franchise, when we look at and we've made these games, you end up naturally comparing so much of what gets done critically against some of the work that these guys did. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the one thing I'll tell you, like when Joel, immediately when he showed up, one of the things I just loved was there was just such a pure focus on the content. And he was so unfiltered in his feedback about it, but in a great way. And so it was like, you know, so that was really great.
He's like that too, which is great.
Also, not to kiss your guys' ass in front of you or anything, but you seem like a nice, humble group. I could be completely wrong, right? But it feels like three huge egos walking back in the studio. Oh, I see. That could be a disaster.
Which two?
He put himself in the game, for Christ's sake.
I'll say this again. It's my fault I did it, and I did it again.
And he did it again.
He's making his way back in the game. Sergeant Griggs lives. Even though he got whacked on that bridge, I mean, we brought him back to life.
Wound?
It was. It's a through and through.
It's a new
it was
price.
Clean shot. He walked off that bridge.
I don't know. I think that the studio has always been super hyper critical of each other's stuff and things in general. Like, we're never happy with anybody's game, let alone our own game. And that's always steered us well, putting stuff out, because, you know, you can't really design by committee or listen to all these different voices. At some point, you have to make some calls, and we are so critical of our own stuff that I think it kind of keeps you humble. And for everything that you make that is good, there's a bunch of people that don't like it. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you can really drink your own Kool-Aid and kind of grow and continue to get better. I think that some people will plateau and kind of cruise the rest of their careers, but if you're not growing, then you're just dying, I think. And so we're always trying to get better at different things, like Joel taking on photogrammetry. It's a whole new thing for us, you know, and different you're always trying to find new techniques to trick people into thinking the game is better.
Hey, I've embraced motion capture finally.
Hey, there we go.
Hey.
It took a little time.
Like a cool juggernaut suit.
Yeah.
But if you kind of think you're the and you think that's it, you're done.
Yeah.
Right? You're not gonna make anything new. And I think that it's one big thing, especially on this title, is creating disruption and creating situations where people are uneasy, and making people think differently than they normally do. And that's the only way you're going to get a different result. And so if you think that you're great and think that you're the best at everything, you're never going to kind of push yourself to think differently, I think.
Well, nobody's going to want to work with you.
Well, there's that.
There's a really weird balance, and I don't even know how I can articulate it that well. But it's like humble's good, but in an environment like this, on a project that this is important, that getting things right is so important. It's difficult you have to be confident, but at the same time, confident and respectful. I don't know how to perfectly describe it, but
it's an internal.
It's like you know what you're
thing,
doing, but you're still listening to people,
right?
And you're not taking your confidence and turning it into ego. I think that's when it gets really disruptive. Like it gets toxic if you have someone that they have that confidence that becomes ego because they're not listening to anyone and they just keep pushing forward, and they, you're giving them red flags and they ignore everyone.
And you've seen some of that in the industry?
Well, it happens sometimes. I think, because I think someone who gets in that position, they get unbalanced and they just think that they're, being really decisive. Mm-hmm. I think that's difficult. But everyone around here has we have a lot of gotcha moments where, we'll be passionately backing a decision or something, or like a thing, and then, we call each other out. I think it's really important, the way that we're able to kind of call each other out on stuff, and it's not, there's a good thing where we trust each other enough where it doesn't get personal. Mm-hmm. We can really go at it sometimes. Really go at it.
So you were kind of the canary in the Activision coal mine? Is that how it works? And then you sounded the alarm for everybody else?
No.
Coming here?
Yeah.
No, I think that we all kind of, found our own kind of things.
Yeah. It had to be just like it was when we left. It really had to be your own decision.
Yeah.
And
it's important stuff.
It's important because I would never want to go someplace and then tell a bunch of my friends and like sell them on an idea and then have them show up and it not work out. So that in that respect, you have to let people make their own decisions. So I was the first to come over here, and it's basically, I think that piqued people's interest. And when that happened,
but we're all older now, and we have mortgages and families, and the weight of those decisions is very heavy.
Nobody came to it lightly.
And leaving other places feels, if you leave a bunch of coworkers that you've worked with for like 12 years, it's like breaking up with like 60 girlfriends. And so it's a hard thing to do, but
but I met Pat.
When you have that passion of where you want to, of a project, you could sink your next 3 years into, when the passion hits you have to go with it, I think.
Yeah, when every one of us met Pat, it was like go time.
Yeah,
that's all it took.
That's very kind of you to say.
Well,
thank you.
He's got the fire.
He has a kindred
He's got the fire.
To what we all are passionate about, which is one being number one. He says that I have the ego, but
I'm just being
He's the verbal manifestation of our ego.
What these guys all said individually. Sorry, I cut you off.
No. I was just gonna say it was a passion thing that was all similar to.
It's fire.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's good fire.
Anyway,
each one of these guys, when I met with them, in their own unique way and independent of one another, were so intense about questions they had in terms of like, hey, look, I gotta ask exactly how are you making this and things like that, because there's a lot of things I want to do completely different. There's a lot of stuff I want to reinvent. There's a lot of different things. They were so bold about what their aspirations were, which was another way of them saying like, hey, this better not be some formulaic thing in any way. Yeah. And each one of them, when they came here, I mean, I told you guys that, Jeff overhauled every bit of the movement and gun handling in this game. And, Griggs, the first thing he did was he overhauled everything you see with that gun on screen. You'll see every one of those is completely new, fresh, how it works, all the realism. All of the way we make the art in the game was completely overhauled by Joel. And they were like, okay, I want to do all these different things. And it was just because every one of them, I remember I was at the interview with Griggs. And it's only the second time in my career, and I'm an old guy, so I've been in a lot of interviews where you sit down, you meet him and stuff like that. The waiter comes over at a restaurant, and she said, can I get you a drink? And I said, yeah, sparkling water. And he goes, yeah, what do you have for beer? I'm like, oh, this guy's got balls. And then she goes, you want the 16 or the 32? He's like, the 32. What is that? I was like, okay. So anyway, we're talking, and I said to him, hey, look, dude, if you are interested in coming and making the very best animation work you've ever done in your entire life, I want you to come here. But I really mean like the best you've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And he goes, well, I can't I can't answer that for you the way you want me to answer it. I'll tell you this: I'll make the best animation you've ever seen. And I was looking at him, and he was sitting. He goes to me, because he goes, dude. He goes, the way it is with me is every single animation I have ever made, within an hour, I look back at it and say, I could do that better. I could change that. He goes, so my bar is just it never. I can't help that. So he goes, I can tell you that in the moment, maybe it will be, and then it'll change. And the thing I've noticed working with these guys is that that's been really, really wonderful is, as artists and creatives, you're never, I think it's very common to never be satisfied with your own work product. And they never, ever, ever are. I've seen Joel on a Friday say, like, look at this, it's fucking awesome! And on Monday, I destroyed it.
Or it's more that he fixed it all over the weekend,
Right.
And now he's happy with it.
But to go with what Pat's saying, it's like the people that were already here at Infinity Ward. I think it was like talking about the engine that's been in development. They're a crew of people here that are absolutely incredible. That totally at the top of their game, and it was. I'm not just saying that to be a kiss ass. It was really me, Pat saying I overhauled the art, but that was really because I saw this person working on this, and I went, "Wow, what are you doing?" And I went around the studio, and I just went on a discovery mission, and I found people from all walks of life doing different things and doing, all in their own way, cutting edge things. And when you're in a position like Pat luckily enabled all of us that came back to acknowledge those things, see them, and then help unlock those people. So really what we're looking at is the studio is really working at a level I've never seen before, because we unlocked this potential that was here.
But I actually think that
communication too.
I was thinking about this a little while ago. I actually think that maybe deep down, wherever these people, everyone kind of, where they all started and where they came from, I think that what drove them to come to the studio was the Modern Warfare series. Yeah. And that they haven't had the opportunity to work on that. And I feel like when we started working on this, slowly but surely, everybody started kind of coalescing into, holy crap, we're making a Modern Warfare game. And you could just see, the smiles in the hallways, and we'd have these milestones and these little victories, and it's like it's starting to get there, and it's building and building, and you could just see, like, we'd have these little victories, and people would just walk down the hall with a bit bigger smile, and people were putting in some extra hours, and I think that all the talent they needed was here. Maybe we pushed them in one direction or another, but I think it's the Modern Warfare title really
everybody's
kind of
gotten caught up in what it means.
We have a thing that we say with the people in the team to that end, and not in a mean way, but don't say this is the way we've always done it, because you've never done work like you were expecting that we do. You know what I mean?
He'll come in and derail a whole thing.
Okay.
And then
he'll come in and
derail a whole thing.
But then we'll make it better.
But it's because he saw something that we didn't see, and as frustrating as it is, it's never failed us, because it's ratcheted up the quality.
Did you see that screenshot, by the way, with the MP7?
Yeah, I know. We got that.
Okay.
I got it. It's for your screenshots.
A finger was not in the right place.
But he catches details that slip back. So there's been some next level that's been happening. It has to do with the way that all the studio leadership kind of interacts with each other, and like having that attitude of like, you think that's good enough? Well, it's okay, but I think you could do better.
Yeah. You're not trying to be dicks about it. You're just genuinely trying to, like.
It's hard not
one
to be
of the challenges I think you run into, and it was very natural with these guys because they had been away from this franchise for a long time, is you always have this, it's almost an innovator's dilemma where you want to disrupt, but not just for the sake of disrupting. You know what I mean? I think it's very easy, especially with something that's been as successful as Call of Duty's been historically, to find yourself in a rut where you're like, oh, you're doing these things because these things have worked. And I do believe that returning with Modern Warfare, you of course you hope, and people who play it will be the ultimate judges, but you've got to challenge yourself on all of these things and making sure that people are prepared to be uncomfortable and be disrupted from that comfort zone in making what they make is something that has been critical that these guys have brought.
Mm-hmm. And how is that kind of? It seems like there was almost like this perfect storm of the gang getting together. You know, we had this.
It is really weird.
This highly motivated existing core team that has been here. You guys all coming back, and then we have
coming back too.
Well, Z was in charge of gameplay from the very first one.
Has always been my boss.
So Z's from 2015.
We have Naughty Dog guys coming over. Like
that was the other thing. The narrative on this project is at a god tier level. I've never when I was working on Modern. Are they here?
He's right back there.
Oh, he's back.
He's crying, actually.
Yeah. But I would say, like, when I was doing Modern Warfare 1, I was like, God, this story is like, I don't totally understand this. Because I had to do all the end cutscenes. This doesn't really make that much sense.
Is this Lost?
And then it came out, and a lot of people said, what a great story. I went, really? Okay. And then Modern Warfare 2 came out, and I had pulled that duty again where I had to do all the like end cutscene stuff, and I was tying stuff, the levels together with imagery. And that story really threw me for a loop. Really was trying to catch up with it. But this, I watched the end of it. I highly suggest if you get to play the game, you play it all the way to the end and see play all the way through single player. And the end of the game is so f***ing awesome, and it's great storytelling, and it has such a great payoff.
It is something that could have really, really gone.
It could have gone really bad.
Because these guys come back in, right, and they've got so much energy, and like, okay. I mean, I remember like one of the first things Jeff says, he goes, I always wanted to go back and do a couple of things, and he goes, I suppose it's too late now, because they had left, and make some changes into a TU on Modern Warfare 2. And it's like, dude, that's just leave that in the past, But they had all of these ideas and thoughts and things like that, like, okay, and energy, and obviously know-how and credibility. But then you've also got, like, Jacob and Taylor and some of these guys who've been at Naughty Dog working on story stuff. And I remember the first times when, like, Z started to work with Jacob and Taylor and stuff like that. And you guys started working with Taylor. I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting how this works.
We had to find
and famously, it really worked out wonderfully because you guys had a tremendous respect for what they brought in a narrative experiential zone, and they had tremendous respect for what you guys had done, and like one of their pillars was Modern Warfare, and so it ended up being wonderful how they ended up working together. But I do remember holding my breath on that one.
Well, you did take us to a gun sight shooting school, and we all had live rounds, and so eventually, after a week, we got along.
Yeah, we all went to gunfighting school.
Yeah, we had to line up in formation, and the line one had live, like, loaded ammunition, had to pivot and fire at a target. Yeah. And then line two had to do the same exact thing,
but not pull
the trigger.
No, they had us the first day. They trained us all with like draws, and so where we were in the town we were in Arizona too. From that point on.
Oh yeah, we didn't.
You wear guns on you, loaded.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys tell you, I wore mine. I put mine on at the airport. I had it on the whole trip.
The liquor store guy looked at him a little weird, but even when we're on the school grounds, they like, you can dismantle your weapon and unload it if you want, and they're like really look down on you to do it.
Yeah, like if you want to be a wuss.
So we're walking around with live guns on our hips all day, and then we're sitting. Funny story, we're sitting down on this.
It was after one of the training sessions. We came back for lunch. Everybody was just chilling, sitting down at the other end of the walkway. I went to the restroom, came back, and I'm walking towards them.
Yeah, we're all in line. Yeah. We're here on this deck of concrete, and Griggs is walking back.
So my holster, for some reason, lost a screw. And I'm walking like a cowboy, like shaking my hips. And then all of a sudden, my gun falls out of my holster onto the ground, and the barrel is pointing down.
But all we hear is metal on concrete, and we knew immediately what it was, and we're all like,
everybody goes, oh. And I'm like, and they're like, don't handle your weapons while you're not on a range. So I was like, okay, if I pick it up, I'm the only black guy in this. And they're like, he has a gun! So I was like, I don't know what I should do. I was like, maybe I should pick it up.
I dropped my gun.
Yeah. And luckily, I was able to.
It was a really good
cool
place.
experience.
Yeah, it was a great experience. But
I think we burnt through 800 rounds apiece. Like,
it's
crazy.
We went through like full on kill houses.
Don't tell actors that.
No,
It was a good time, but it was also
they were
good.
very uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
They were very uncomfortable.
I mean, that and a bunch of other experiences, but we had some friction in the beginning, and we had to find our way. But I think it worked out because everybody, they wanted to make
Everybody's coming from a good place, and everybody just has different styles of
we just have to learn each other's ways.
thing in life where it's like you either choose to be a dick or don't be a dick.
It's fun. It's
You
fun
know,
to
it can
not be a
happen in
dick.
traffic or it can happen at work with people that you work with. You know,
Project is king.
don't be a dick. Be and it's also
It is
it's
amazing
like be
when
a
you just
professional.
stick to content. It's just about the content. You always remember and remind everybody it's just about the content. People tend to
I've seen people on the art team that when I first got here, they were doing a particular part of the art, and I wouldn't have even hired them at that point. I would have went, ugh, yeah, whatever. That same person today is doing the type of work that I would want 3 more of them. At that just incredible, unbelievable. It's incredible to watch someone start out that way. You start working with them, and they had the thick skin to go through the process of, that's not a good enough. Try this. Talk to this person. Talk to it wasn't just giving feedback to someone. It was encouraging them to talk to their peers more, because that was another thing here. It's
don't rely on emails.
getting everybody to talk to each other, and don't communicate through an email. Get up and put a face on the thing that you're advocating for.
That was an interesting thing you guys brought, because we were in all the Call of Duty teams that work on it, there's so many people. It becomes so Jira and electronic focused in all the different facilities for it, where it ends up being a bit of the esprit de corps for communications like that. And the first thing these guys are like, what the f*** is this? Get up and go talk to the guy. And they really broke that down a lot. And even though we still have a lot of people working on these games, these guys are all like, no, just talk to the person as opposed to a Jira or something like that.
It's crucial.
I love the comparison of it's like breaking up with 60 girlfriends. Is it hard not to have hard feelings after that?
No, there's absolutely zero hard feelings.
Oh, really?
With we love those guys. I mean, half those guys were at my wedding, and it's a small industry, and a lot of stuff happens, but it's I think some people can kind of not disassociate work and life, and no, I mean, we were super jazzed for all their stuff coming out, and
I thought Apex was brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And what was really weird about, I don't know if you guys had the same reaction, but maybe you were there longer than I was. I left February 2017 so I had seen nothing on. I didn't know anything about Apex, even when you said about
they hadn't started
the
it when
scavenger
I was
character that I did for Titanfall 1. When I saw it in the game, I was like, whoa, wow. And I think what was incredible about it was seeing a game that I sort of had the DNA of something I was working on, and it came from that universe, but seeing it completely realized in a way I never thought possible. And it was like, I actually had this moment where I got to see something really fresh for the first time and have a real honest reaction to it. And the way that they did the way they marketed it, the way they unveiled it, I was just sitting here going, wow.
Yeah, that was
I was so
that's
we were
amazing.
so busy here working on our stuff that I hadn't played Titanfall 2 in a long time, and then jumping in and I knew all the weapons and felt all the geo, and I felt familiar. I was like, this feels so nice. I'm at home, and I did really well until everybody learned the game, and then I got killed.
There was no moment from Ready the Studio announced where you were going where they're like, what the f***? Are you kidding me?
Oh yeah,
there's a bunch of mixed reactions.
Totally.
Yeah.
I did actually. I made sure to go and say goodbye to every single person in the studio the day that I left, and I did a quick exit because I didn't want to linger around and make.
I think you missed some because they were in meetings, but
yeah, there was a couple people I missed, but I tried
to
get to everybody. I missed maybe 2 or 3 people, but
I did the same.
Yeah, it was like breaking up with 60 plus, people. But there were hurt feelings. There were people that were really shocked and surprised.
But it's like 12 years with people, you kind of just have to say, oh, yeah, it's not you, it's me. I need to grow. I need to kind of.
Well, you
go
have
off,
different interests. I mean, I really honestly feel that I spent as much time as I possibly could there, Same with these guys too. I think they feel the same way. And you know, I felt like I gave it a really good go, and I gave it. I never held back. Like I was there for about 7 years almost, and I never pulled any. I always went for it as hard as I possibly could, and I just got to a point where I was like, I want something different. And so for me, I could see the trajectory that they were on, and it just wasn't something I wanted to try something new. So that's what it ended up being, and that was surprising to some people. And there was a period of people, not completely understanding my reasoning, and then not talking. You just get that when you don't work with someone anymore.
It's an emotional. I mean, it is just work, and it is personal, but we spend so much time at work that you make these relationships with these people, and then it kind of is a little personal in a little ways.
It's just like breaking up with a girlfriend, right? Yeah. You have that person that you see every day and you talk to every day, and then you don't have 60 or 70 of them. It's a different thing.
The only animosity I have is my product has to be better than yours. That's it.
That's the drive.
We're insanely competitive.
Competition. That's it. That's friendly competition.
The competitive thing, I think, is good for everybody all around. And if you don't have an equal and opposite force that you're really pushing against, it doesn't create that fire to do better. And I think that's all around.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ended up coming back, I mean, I grew up kind of my dad was in the Marines for 30 years, and so just the, modern military things holds a pretty dear spot, so.
Yeah.
I think we left with a lot more, stuff that we wanted, more stories we wanted to tell and more things we wanted to do, and, I think stuff.
Was it bundled up at all with acquisition? How does that timeline work out?
I didn't even know they were going to do that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
I had this really weird thing where I just keep leaving franchises and right before it takes off.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to do it,
Yeah, I'll keep doing it.
I love doing it. I love like
there you go.
I like to tee up the ball and say, hey, you guys got this. I'm out.
One of these days, Call of Duty will take off.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Call of Duty does okay. And then right before, we'll see what happens.
Just in the interest of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
We got Jacob.
Yes, I'm sorry, Jacob.
Oh, yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah, that was
great.
great. Thank you so much.
All good.
That was just a clip from a larger show called The Game Informer Show. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, or GameInformer.com. We take the fun opportunities and exclusive information from Game Informer magazine and boil it into a show that airs every Thursday with exclusive cover story information, developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So come love games with us.